I'd like to call the meeting to order. It's a regular town board meeting, February 9th, 2015, 7 p.m. We're in the Town Activity Center. Would you all please join us and rise for the Pledge of Allegiance led by Councilman Brian Clements.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, thank you and welcome. We have two public hearings tonight. Rose, would you read the first one, 1.1, please?
It's a public hearing on the emergency ambulance service agreement between the town of Queensbury and Bay Ridge Rescue Squad, Inc. for 2015.
Okay, this is a one-year agreement with the Bay Ridge Rescue Squad, or the ambulance service. And it is basically operations is going to be the same, insurance is the same, debt service is the same, paid staffing goes up $20,000. It's a one-year agreement. Last year's agreement was $413,000. $413,192 to be specific. This year's is just $20,000 more for the paid staffing. So the total one-year agreement, and this is set a public hearing. It's $20,000. But if anybody, this is to set the public hearing, but if anybody would like to speak to this, I'll allow that at this time. And we'll continue the public hearing. Or wait a minute, I set the public hearing. Tonight is the public hearing, that's right, I'm thinking of the next one. So if anybody would like to speak to this proposed emergency ambulance service agreement between the town and the Bay Ridge Rescue Squad, the public hearing is now open. Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Any comments or thoughts on behalf of the town board? Seeing none, I'll ask for a roll. Close the public hearing. I'll ask for a roll call vote, please. Rose.
I'll introduce.
Introduced by Councilman Medevere, seconded by Councilman Clements.
And Mr. Medevere?
Yes.
Mr. Clements?
Yes.
Mr. Irish?
Yes.
Mr. Vaness?
Yes.
Mr. Stroh?
Yes. Okay. Resolution passes. The next public hearing is 1.2. Rose.
It's a continuation of a public hearing enacting local law to establish temporary moratorium on residential multifamily construction within Bay Road Office District.
Okay, this is a proposal to have a 6-month moratorium in our Bay Road Office District. There are a variety of reasons for this, the big one being the limited sewer capacity. This went before the Warren County Planning Department. They considered the proposal. They determined that it involved local issues without any significant impacts on Warren County properties and therefore recommended no county impact. It went before the Queensbury Planning Board for their consideration and advisement. And they recommended careful review and that we should develop a plan for sewer expansion. And I guess they also were a little bit concerned that they had a lack of information upon which to make a decision on this matter. But they did, and they made the recommendation that the town be careful in its review of this moratorium, temporary moratorium. So we had a public hearing on January 26th, and I'll continue that tonight. And I want to hear all interested parties. And it is a law to establish a temporary moratorium on residential multifamily construction in the Bay Road Office District. This does not apply to applications that have already been approved by the town. And we've given a variety of reasons for this. There is an effort also, besides the lack of sewer capacity, for further multifamily development. This board likes to encourage commercial development because it believes that commercial development provides good jobs and it's a benefit to the taxpayer. And if you take a look at Ohio University's cost of community services, it says that residential land is a net drain on local government to the tune of, for every dollar they put in, they require $1.15 to $1.50 in services. In contrast to that, commercial development, for every dollar that they put in, only requires 35 cents to 65 cents in government services. So you have to be balanced in the way that you want to develop your town to make sure it does not overly burden the taxpayer. Now, this 6-month moratorium is a chance to give us a look-see, if you will. Maybe we'll end up doing nothing. Maybe we'll reduce the multifamily density. Maybe we'll reduce the amount of office zone. Maybe we'll change the setbacks. Maybe we'll do a combination of the above. Maybe we'll do something that I haven't even mentioned yet because the idea hasn't appeared yet. This gives us 6 months to consider this resolution. Now, given the corridor's sewer capacity limitations and the town's desire to encourage commercial growth along this corridor, after all, the title of the zone is office zone, and we want to have good jobs, and we want the lower tax burdens, we want to do the responsible thing, and that's why this board's considering this at this time. All the other uses, and we're only talking about multifamily uses, all the other uses are not being impacted by this proposal. And as I showed you last time, Fowler Square, we have 142 apartments. Cottage Hill, 148 apartments. And so we've got close to about 290 apartments coming online. And we've got some beautiful office lots that have been set aside for office lot subdivision or development. And this board doesn't think in terms of today, it thinks in terms of tomorrow. What is this town going to need 10 years, 15 years, 20 years from now? We have to consider that. So this 6-month moratorium will enable us to do those kind of things. Now, before we open it to the public, is there any comments or thoughts on behalf of the board at this point in time? You're welcome to come in at any time you want. Okay. Is there anybody from the public? I left the public hearing open. Yes, Kathy?
Kathleen Sonabin, Cedar Court, Queensbury. I fully support the moratorium on multifamily construction in the Bay Road Office District and encourage you to vote tonight to implement it. This town board also deserves appreciation for undertaking the independent engineering study of Bay Road sewer capacity. Unfortunately, contrary to reports from the Post-Star and the Queensbury Director of Wastewater, the study does not confirm that there is sufficient capacity for all currently approved projects, let alone additional projects. MJ Engineering's conclusion of sufficiency was based on the map plan and report sewage flows legally approved by the town board, not the projected flows of those projects as approved by the planning and zoning boards. MJ's conclusion depends on the town not issuing permits, sewer permits in excess of legally approved flows. When you add existing flows to projected flows, and this is all in the study, tables 3 and 4, which is a more realistic estimate, it exceeds 100% of capacity. That clearly fails the 80% capacity test cited by Queensbury Director of Wastewater at the December 23, 2014 workshop meeting with MJ Engineering as the threshold for issuing sewer permits without the necessary analysis and upgrades. Operating a sewer system above 80% capacity can result in unpleasant surprises. At the workshop meeting, the representative from MJ Engineering stated that when projects exceed their legally approved sewer capacity, it is the developer that bears the necessary cost to upgrade. Obviously, the cost of necessary upgrades and who pays for it needs to get sorted out before there is any more construction or sewer permits issued. Otherwise, the town board will be unfairly enriching certain developers with capacity that the town purchased to accommodate all property owners on the Bay Road corridor. And a looming crisis will now become a very near-term crisis. Another workshop meeting with MJ Engineering and Queensbury Director of Wastewater should be scheduled as soon as possible. At the last town board meeting, you received great pressure from one property owner who didn't want you to tighten the code from the current 300-foot prohibition of residences along Bay Road. Don't let him distract you from the very real sewer problem. By his own admission, he acquired the property in 2002. At that time, the planning board had long enforced the 1,000-foot prohibition of residences, and the town had officially codified it. There is no requirement that the town board guarantee him a profit. To the contrary, the town board's only responsibility is to the well-being of the community in general. I do not blame this town board for the mistakes of past boards, but what happens under your watch is now your responsibility. In a perfect world, you should be able to count on your directors of wastewater and zoning and planning to know the code, read applications and studies thoroughly, and provide good guidance. You should be able to count on the planning board and the zoning boards to make knowledgeable and good decisions for the benefit of the town as a whole. When those individuals prove unwilling or unable to do so, you have the authority to replace them. Given the track record of those individuals with respect to Bay Road, you should not allow any sewer permits to be granted without the vote of the entire town board. And you should not allow the planning board without the vote of the entire town board to approve projects with sewer flows in excess of what the town board legally approved with their respective map plan and reports. Without effective staff and boards, a lot can slip by you. For example, not only will Fowler Square require more than 3 times the legally approved capacity of 12,000 gallons per day for the entire property, but this project is just phase 1, with more construction and required capacity to come. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Kathy.
I will email this to you, so you don't have to retype it, but I'll give you the copy so you can proof it.
Anyone else like to speak to this topic? And the topic is our consideration to adopt a local law establishing a temporary moratorium on residential multifamily construction within the Bay Road Office District. Yes, Doug?
Good evening, everybody. Doug Hour, 16 Oakwood Drive. My friend Travis Whitehead is here tonight. He's another one that does some heavy lifting for the county of Warren, and it does affect the town of Queensbury. But Kathleen just spoke very eloquently, and actually I have nothing to add to that, except to say that I think that you guys are on the right track with this. And she has drilled down into this report in a way that, quite honestly, I would not have been able to do. And I'm an engineer. I implore you to look at this. When she rolled this out for me just today, it was a little bit difficult for me to follow, but I concur with what she said, that I believe that these capacities have been exceeded, and this really needs a close look. I always had a sense that this was going to be the situation, because I knew what the design parameters were. You know, as I had mentioned several times, we designed this based on the code in place at the time at the town's request. And we put a lot of headroom into the design at that point. And you know, looking at this thing kind of at a thumbnail distance, I said to myself, there's something wrong with this. And fortunately, you had a report done. And I think the data is in there. I think it's a matter of the way you look at that data, that and clarification from M&J would be helpful. I'd like to sit in on that discussion, because this is an engineering issue. You can't make pi 3 And I say that because it was actually an elected official, I don't remember in which one of the Dakotas, North or South Dakota, that wanted to make a law to make pi 3 because his son was having trouble in math, understanding that it was an irrational number. That's a fact. It was many years ago. I think I was in college at the time that it was reported. But this is not a political issue. This is going to be a simple discussion with the engineers that did this to look at this to say, yes, this could very well be the case. When you build an airplane, Boeing doesn't build airplanes based on some nebulous expectation of the weight of the passengers. They full well know, because if they see somebody stepping on a plane that's a little overweight, they're not going to say to them, oh, you can't get on board. They full well know. So this is a situation that I think the 6 months that you're allowing for this breather, I'll call it, I think will give you an opportunity to look and understand better. If nothing else, to know what the bogey is going to be in terms of cost for whoever it is that is going to have to foot the expense for this, whether it be, you, which is us, the town taxpayers, or the developers, which, I vote for the developers to have to pay the freight on this. Obviously, they're the ones that make the profit. And, land speculation is a tricky business. I own a piece of land out at the airport. I've had for 25 years. I haven't made a penny on it. I just pay tax on it. It's because the fellow that I had bought it with had the intention of we were going to build what they call skin staplers for Johnson & Johnson. He sold the patent to them, and so we were out of the business. But in any case, that's c'est la vie. So you're doing a good thing here, and my interest in this, I don't have a dog in the fight other than I was involved with the original design of this, and I don't like to see what happened, because there were good people, as I've said before, that we took into consideration for this. We designed this thing as best we could. I think we did a good job at the request of the town, and now all of that's been knocked into a cocked hat, so it's up to you guys to fix it. So thank you.
Okay, thanks, Doug. Anybody else like to speak to this topic? Travis?
Travis Whitehead, Queensberry. I'd just like to say I support the moratorium. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Travis. Dan?
This is America. Good evening, Dan Valenti, Legacy Land Holdings, the owner of Fairfield Professional Office Park. I think the most affected by this currently. I want to clarify a few things. There's a lot of terminology that's been thrown around here in discussion with, first of all, the Fairfield Professional Office Park, which we talk about office zones and commercial zones. There's a difference between a commercial zone and what I consider an office zone. I can't put, in commercials property, I would be able to put, obviously, much more substantial commercialized buildings there. I can't do that. Professional offices strictly just that. So there is a limit to that. That's number one. Number two, we've been talking about a sewer district. Bay Road doesn't have a true sewer district. And had a lengthy discussion with the Queensberry Wastewater Department. He agrees there is no true sewer district. There never was a true sewer district formed in the town of Queensberry for Bay Road. Typically when a town, and I'm going to assume, I'm just going to, speaking to everyone, not just yourselves, when a district is formed, the properties are outlined, there's a perimeter determined, and all those properties are incorporated within that sewer district, whether they like it or not. In this case, that's not what happened. There's multiple extensions that come from Quaker Road Sewer District. Now that's a true sewer district. So Bay Road has multiple extensions off of that, and my Fairfield Professional Office Park is actually Sewer District Extension number 11, which here is the map plan and report for that. Within that, I had to purchase my capacities for Fairfield Professional Office Park, which I had done back in 2008. So I bought 6,400 gallons of capacity for the Fairfield Professional Office Park at that time. And I did that to ensure that I couldn't lose that capacity. So somebody up the road couldn't have bought out, and then that capacity wasn't left on Bay Road for me to be able to acquire down the road. So it was a way of protecting that I did have that capacity to use as development occurred there. I'm going to give you
Does that
some.
include all those lots in that?
That's what I purchased for the entire Fairfield Professional Office Park. So there's currently, as you know, the proposal was going to come in here for some senior housing, and that would encompass 10 lots there. I have 3 lots that we have sold. That would leave a remainder of 3 lots along Bay Road, that front Bay Road, that would still be professional office within that 300-foot requirement currently. The other 10 lots is what we were going to propose. I have a copy of that site plan if you'd like to see that. I don't know if you have. It's a small version. If you'd like to have that, I'd be glad to hand it out. But those 10 lots are included in these calculations that I'm going to give you now. So, as I said, I purchased 6,400 gallons of usage per day for that entire subdivision back in 2008. We are currently using for 4 Fairfield Drive, which is the Northeast Surgical Building. We are using on an average 222.3 gallons per day. Those numbers came right from your sewer department. I called and I got these numbers right from them. 6 Fairfield, which is Parsons Dentistry, is using an average of 44.5 gallons per day. So I have right now been using a total, my balance, I should say, is 6,132 gallons of usage per day that I am not using currently, that I'm entitled to. And that report that has just recently been done was supposed to take into account for, I'm assuming, correct, Mr. Supervisor?
What's that, Dan?
That the latest report that you guys just had the study, yeah, that took into account all the capacity that was currently bought
Well, it took into account the capacity of,
for Fairfield that I own,
you know,
Cottage Hill, and I know Fowler Square. So all these are district extensions, mind you. So if there's added capacity or somebody else wants to get into this sewer, they have to file an extension. It's not you can't just get in. If the capacity's not there, you can't be in. You just can't get, or you're going to have to upgrade the system. It's that simple. It's not you can just get into this if you want. You absolutely have to file a district extension. So there's a process, and it's a lengthy process, and it's a costly process. So every user, the only users that are affecting this system are the people that are already purchased or bought into it. Now, I don't know who, I know Fowler Square, I don't know if they've purchased their capacity as of yet. Like I said, I did mine in 2008, so I know I'm entitled to that usage. So I'm going to continue with our numbers on gallonage here. My balance of usage based on what we're doing annual or daily now, I have a 6,132 gallon excess. The project we were going to propose before the board here that for the senior housing will require 4,116 gallons of usage per day. All right, that's based on a history that was developed, and I have the engineer, Tom Nace, gave me that statistic. He gave me those numbers. Those numbers I didn't just pull out of the air, but I have an email from him stating that based on a history of what the senior apartments are doing for Rich Skimmelhorn, that's the usage that they will need there per day. 4,116 gallons per day. Okay, so that leaves me a balance. If you add up all those totals, say that was all built out, I would still have a balance of 2,016 gallons of usage per day that I own. for the remaining 3 lots on the front of Bay Road. That will leave me 672 gallons per lot per day. Plenty for what I have there. So what I'm trying to, I guess, get to is, number one, I'm a little leery of the whole timing of this whole thing. I'm a little concerned about what the motive is behind here. I do not, I've been fighting. I told most, I know Mr. Irish wasn't here, but I have a long history here. I'm a second generation owner of the property. I did pay fair market value for the property. I did invest a lot of money there. I've been paying taxes for over 10 plus 12 years. 2002, 13 years. I got $250,000 in taxes there. I've sold 3 lots. The last lot I sold was 5 years ago. I have no interest in the lots right now. I had Bob Sears here. He clearly stated that there's over 200,000 square feet of professional office space available in the town of Queensbury. There's no demand. I have no demand. So I don't know, it's becoming a hardship for me. I have to continuously carry this. And will this market turn for professional office? I don't know that. I don't have a crystal ball, and neither do you. We're not proposing here anything that's going to be detrimental to anybody. The nearest building's 450, 500 feet from Bay Road is what the proposal would be. Well in excess of the 300-foot setback. If you take a look at the site plan, lots of green space, a lot more so than would be there if I built professional offices on every lot. I could easily exceed or match the gallon usage on a sewer system, but I own that usage. I'm not going to burden that system anymore. That's already accounted for, in all fairness. So I also think that I have so many notes here, not as eloquent as Mrs. Sonneban there, but it's very personal to me. This has been a long, drawn-out thing. I don't feel that it's fair to pull the rug out from under somebody once they see a project coming along that they don't like, and that's the way I feel. That's just my personal opinion right now. To take that and then pull and change a zone, and this is the only way I think this. I don't think there's a viable or honest way you can set a moratorium based on the sewer facts that I see here. Nothing's going to be built out in 6 months. All these projects would have to be 100% online, and even if they were, we were told they were going to be at 80% capacity for that sewer extension. I got to clarify myself. This has been a long, drawn-out battle, but it was never done right at the onset. When I talk about that, I'm talking about the sewer district was never formed by the town. So to say that this residents are going to be burdened by a fee or whatever is untrue, because only the users would have to pay for that, at least from my end. I'd like to put the shoe on the other foot, you know what I mean? If you're in my position, I know, like I said, people have do land speculation all the time. I'm not asking that you guarantee me a profit, but I don't want the rug pulled out from me when you see a project come along that somebody doesn't like. That's how I feel. So, you have any questions for me before I step out of here?
I don't have a question, Dan, as much as a comment. You made a comment about your concern about the timing of it. And to be quite honest with you, I think the whole idea of a moratorium came up based on the sewer study, not on what you were planning to do with your project.
Yep.
That really had more to do with what we were looking at 6-8 months ago with Bay Road in its entirety for what's going on there. So I know you got some projects that you were planning on, and you had, you've got an agreement with Rich, but it really didn't have anything to do with your project as much as it did the entire, sewer project.
And I respect that. If you want to put a moratorium on just the sewers, and do it for just the sewers, and let's pull this tweaking or changing of the zone out of the equation. Because if you vote for this, I think my facts, I think, are pretty strong that first of all, you're not going to have all these projects built out in 6 months. It's going to take probably in excess. I know it would be at least a year and a half before they would ever all be built out. Fowler Square, we know, is tied up. So I don't see how a 6-month moratorium on a sewer is justifiable because it's nonsense. It's not going to be, you're not going to have that burden on there.
Well,
So, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry.
I just wanted to say that one of the things that we're looking at is asking some more questions of MJ Engineering. I mean, they gave us I think they did a great job with the report. I think we have some other questions. And to concur with Doug, we were thinking about this long before Mr. Skimmerhorn came in and looked, laid out some plans. So
Okay, good.
It isn't because of your project.
Well, I'm happy to hear that. I am happy to hear that, but I really think if it's going to be based on the sewer, then let's base it on the sewer. If you want to do a moratorium and take the time to study the sewer, I don't have a problem with that. But I do think there's a lot of issues that there's not a true sewer district. I think there's a lot of misleading information out there to the public that the taxpayers are going to be burdened by upgrades to a system that I don't believe is true. It's just not, because if you're going to burden it, the upgrade or the user's going to have to upgrade it. I think these are the facts.
You and I spoke last meeting, and we spoke about, and I told you my whole theory was on the sewer thing.
Yep.
And I've done some homework, and I haven't done everything I want to do yet, but I have done some. There is a way to increase capacity on that Bay Road sewer.
Absolutely there is.
But
Yeah.
you can increase capacity on the Bay Road sewer, but you're going to reduce capacity in other locations, because if you increase it there, you've got to take it away from another location. This is what we need to dig into, and we need to find out that if we do increase this capacity over here, where else are we going to hurt within the upper end here? Now, this is the stuff that we need to get into. It isn't the stuff that you can do in a week. It definitely, or 2 weeks that we've had.
Right.
It definitely. And I spoke with Chris Harrington quite a bit about this, and quite often he's getting some other numbers together for me. So yeah, there is a way to increase it. And as I said, there were some things in that report that I didn't like. Number 2 and 3 manhole. Why is there a 2A? So any other report I've seen is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Right.
All of a sudden we got a 2A manhole. That tells me there's got to be a reason that there's a 2A manhole somewhere.
It's a patch quilt, network, and I've listened. I fought. My father fought for it at the onset. It goes back to when Mrs. Walters was the supervisor. I mean, it goes back that far, and I don't know how many he gets.
Remember it well.
Yeah.
My job was PD with her.
My father was my father really liked her because she was willing to put money into infrastructure and into the community, which brings good things to the community and a good tax base. Unfortunately, this area wasn't done really in the proper manner, which isn't anybody's fault here, but the capacity is there. I mean, to handle what we need for quite a while. I would have to think that you would agree with that. The system isn't at maximum capacity; it's more near maximum capacity, or 80% at this point, and it's not going to be. It's not going to be for a while. That's my bone of contention.
And you know what? I don't think it's not only on the Bay Road corridor. I mean, we're looking at the same issue over on the Corinth Road corridor, where we have now said we're really not comfortable with allowing any more residential to hook into our sewer capacity on Corinth Road, because if we do, we're going to lose the capacity to bring businesses in.
Right.
Do we want to lose jobs and lose businesses by giving the capacity to residential at that time? So it's not only the Bay Road corridor. This entire sewer project throughout this entire town definitely needs to be reviewed and looked at. And whether it's increasing it and making it bigger or finding a way to make it bigger, I don't know what the answers are yet. I mean, I'll use the example of a young board at this point. We're young and we're learning quickly, believe me.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's...
I feel bad for Chris Harrington, to be honest with you. He stepped into a hornet's nest here. But anyway, like I said, if you want to me, I think you need to separate the two, because if you're here for a zoning change, then that's one thing. If you're here for a sewer moratorium, that's a total nother. But I don't, I'm nervous about this whole thing, and I really don't want to lose and be burdened with another 10 years or 12 years or 20 years, however long it takes, to sell professional offices. I don't feel that that should be, dumped on my shoulders at this point.
Dan,
If you,
could you give us some documentation on the capacity that you've purchased? I mean, just,
yeah,
I mean, you don't have to do it right now. I mean,
yeah, I can give you
I'd
everything,
like to-
absolutely.
I think we ought to have that.
Yeah, absolutely. We have the whole, everything, we have everything, trust me. I can give you the copy of the checks. If you feel that strong, I mean, like I said, everybody wants to do land speculation. I'd be happy to sell them to anybody who wants them. So, it is a burden. I don't want to be dragged down with that for another 10, 15 years. I mean, right now, if I prorate out the 3 lots in since 2008, I'm out another 60 years before I get rid of these things. So, all right, thank you.
Thank you. Jim?
Jim Mackey, Queensbury. 2 weeks ago, oh, by the way, I've got no, I support the moratorium, I've got no skin in that game. But as I said 2 weeks ago, I am very disappointed in the fact that there is a lack of a broad plan for the sewer systems in the town of Queensbury. And I know that sounds like Monday morning quarterbacking. On the other hand, this board's been sitting for over a year, and nothing along that line substantial has been done. In fact, I've heard from that table several times, not to worry, we have capacity.
Can you speak in the mag?
Not to worry, we have capacity. Several times when John has brought issues up, that's what we've been told. So, I'd like to make a recommendation. The recommendation is, as part of this resolution, you include wording that the town board will require that substantial action to begin a broad townwide sewer study is finished in 6 months. Not the rezoning thoughts that you're having, but that something positive will be available in 6 months to be able to look at and see that we're starting a broad plan for Corinth Avenue, for the whole place. Otherwise, I'm afraid that there are going to be several other cases come up where we are restricting growth, again, because of lack of planning in the past. Thank you.
The only thing I would say, Jim, is I like your idea of having a town-wide plan, but I don't like the idea of tying it to this moratorium.
I'm not tying it to the moratorium. I'm saying, forget the moratorium. Within 6 months, a bracket of time,
I like the
you'll
way
have
you're going.
you'll have a plan, something that you can look at. Thank you.
It sounded like you wanted it made part of this resolution.
No, sir.
Okay.
I'm looking at positive progress on the sewer system.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Anybody else? If there's nobody else, Kathy, you can return.
I wanted to respond to a few things that Mr. Valenti said. First of all, I agree. You're not part of the district or until you have a sewer district extension. The thing that's different in this case is the fact that the town purchased, paid all that money for additional capacity so that all of the property owners on Bay Road would be cared for because they knew how difficult and expensive it would be to put in sewer. So this is a different situation. Secondly, I haven't been looking at his properties, so I have no idea what he's doing down there. But if his concern is he can't do professional offices, which I can understand, maybe the solution is a bigger office building. He talked about something more bigger. Well, the office district doesn't limit him to small professional offices. Also, when he talks about how he purchased 6,400 gallons per day of capacity and there's still enough room, he hasn't used that all up. The Cottage Hill property is using 5 times what they got approved for. They're going to need 29,000 gallons per day. And I'm sorry I don't have the study with me, but if any of you do, you can look up on table 4 what they were approved for in the MAP plan report. And it was about 20% of that. So we're talking 24,000 extra that they're going to take up. That swamps the 5,000 or so, 6,000 that he says he has available under Fairfield. So I think I sympathize with this problem. Every time I drive down Bay Road over the last several years, I thought, wow, Valenti's trying to follow the code. He's not one of these people that's gaming the system, and it's too bad it's not working out for him. But right now, hopefully, once you guys have a chance to look at my notes and we have this workshop meeting and we talk to MJ, you'll all understand what I saw in that study. Unless there's something wrong about the study, you don't have enough capacity even for Fowler Square. At this point, as time goes on, you're going to find that once Cottage Hill is done and Fowler Square is done, and they come for a sewer permit, they're going to flunk Chris Harrington's 80% test. And this idea of just dealing with the sewer and not construction, well, you can't build buildings without having sewer available on Bay Road because septics don't work in this soil. That was the whole thing going back decades. The town knew. The town attorneys, real estate attorneys, developers, private citizens. I spent a whole weekend going through the documentation, all the board minutes, going back over 12 years, and I saw Doug Irish's name and John Strauss' name in the public hearing for that original 2002 map plan report. And there was a lot of conversation about, wow, this is so great that we're solving a problem, because the last time we wanted to put sewer in Bay Road, we got a proposal for like $6 million, and it was just unaffordable. So I sympathize with Mr. Valenti, but there isn't capacity. In fact, we have a problem with any additional capacity beyond what's approved, because what's approved can't even be dealt with. Now, you can game the system a little bit because, as he pointed out, sometimes they don't need all the capacity they get approved for. So, for example, if you look at Surrey Fields or Bay Bridge, they're not using all the capacity that they were approved for. Because when you go for approval, you have to follow, I think it's called the 10-state standard. There's engineering standards. Because they don't know how many people are going to end up living in those homes over a long period of time. Right now in my community, which is a townhouse development, there's about 1.5 people per home. But the homes that occasionally get rented, they have 3 to 6 people in them, because our homes are 2 and 3 bedroom homes. So obviously you can easily have more than 1 or 2 people living in those homes. If you plan your sewer system assuming that today's conditions are going to stay the same forever and you're never going to have more people living in them, and then it changes, all of a sudden you guys have a problem, and it's not a problem you can fix quickly overnight. So you could have sewage backing up into people's homes, or you could have it backing up at the manholes on Bay Road and have people smelling the smells. I mean, it could be a real nightmare. And it used to be, we thought this is way down the road, but the combination of Cottage Hill and Fowler Square have really accelerated it and brought it forward. And I really look forward to that workshop meeting with MG Engineering, because I'd really like to get to the truth of this and stop, all the... I hate talking about this. I've talked about it too many times already. I'm just thrilled that you guys finally did this study so that now somebody's taking it seriously. I've been talking about this for a couple of years now. So I really, really appreciate this board. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Dan?
Sorry.
And I'm going to have to clarify a couple of comments Mrs. Sonneman just made. When Cottage Hill was approved, yes, initially I had purchased 6,400 gallons for the back parcel. I had purchased 6,400 for Fairfield and 6,400 for the back. At the time, I had no development plans back there for Cottage Hill. In the process of getting that project approved, we had to go through, obviously, the whole entire town process, and that includes sitting with the sewer and water department to make sure we had capacity for that development. We had determined with the sewer department, Chris Harrington was part of that last meeting when I sat there, and we determined the amount of gallonage we needed to buy in excess to complete that project. That amount was set aside for us at that time. We were told it was going to be there for us in excess of what I had originally purchased to make sure that that project had what it needed and was able to sustain, the sewers were able to sustain that project.
The one question I would have, and it's not specific to your property, but it gives me some concern because the same thing happened at Fowler Square. Their map plan and report, which was submitted to the town, was agreed, the town agreed and accepted it for 12,000 gallons per day. Their new project, and this doesn't have anything to do with the applicant or you,
Right.
their new project is now approved by the planning board for 44,000 gallons a day without ever having talked, and I thank you for talking to Chris first, but
Yep.
the planning board never talked to anybody before they approved that project, that additional wastewater for that project. So that's what
definite
concerns
problem,
me.
sure.
Right, exactly. And when
Absolutely.
Kathleen brings up the initial 6,400 that you had in your map plan report, and then you go back to the planning board and they agree to whatever it is, to my mind, the planning, or the town board is responsible for what we legally accepted.
Right.
And then the planning board went ahead and they granted more than what we legally accepted in that plan report. Those are the things that concern me, and those are the things that I want to have time to take a look at and say, what's the overall impact here? If we've got capacity, that's great, but let's make sure we've got the right numbers down so that everybody knows what they are. Get the planning board, wastewater, the town board, all on the same page here. So when we have new projects coming in front of the town board and the planning board for any sewer district or extension, we're all working off the same playbook here. We know what we're talking about, and everybody's on the same page. That's what my concern is.
Right, absolutely. So some loss internally here, who's getting what. I agree. That would be a major flag for anybody. But I can assure you, we didn't do that. Well, we knew what we needed. We sat down with the sewer department to determine the numbers for that project. We did that, and then the number was set on how much the purchase price was for that and all that jazz. So that was done up front. So we were not part of that.
Do you know what that number is above the 64,000?
Well,
Or 6,400, I'm sorry.
I want to say the entire project needed 29,600 gallons per day, less the 6,400. Obviously, I had already purchased, would be the additional. So, but I believe the total project is what the number the sewer department had settled in on. How's that? So, far cry from 12,000. That Fowler Square originally came in. But nevertheless.
I'll make it really
We're going to be back and forth all night.
I'll make it really
Yeah, I
quick.
don't want the back and forth.
But he's wrong
black letter
about some
type.
things.
It's in black
Look
letter
at the
type.
sewer study. It's more like 35,000 gallons between Fairfield and Cottage Hill. It's in the study from
I
MG
know,
Engineering.
well,
It's their numbers.
and we will have,
That's what he just
this
said.
board, I can read this board.
He agrees.
We
Dan
are
agrees,
gonna,
so there's no
He said 29 plus 6, so that's
Yeah.
35.
Okay, then that's fine. But also, it was Chris Harrington that approved it, not the board,
We
with
will-
that plan report.
we will have that open workshop,
Okay.
and we'll get MJ, excuse me.
Dan shouldn't have to be whipsawed on this. I agree. He was given. He didn't know this. This is the inside baseball of this stuff. And you're Chris Harrington. Maybe he didn't understand this either, John.
I know,
That's
but
where the
Doug,
problem lies.
We tape all this, and.
I know. I think
we'll
they
have-
can hear me.
All right, we'll have that workshop, so are we okay then?
We're
Okay.
good.
Okay. Board members, anything you'd like to add in terms of thoughts at this time? Okay, I'm going to close the public hearing. And is there
I'll make a motion.
a motion by Councilman Irish?
I'll second it.
A second by Councilman Clements. So roll call vote on the moratorium on Bay Road Office District. Rose, please.
Mr. Clements?
Yes.
Mr. Irish?
Yes.
Mr. Vaness?
Yes.
Mr. Stroud?
Yes.
Mr. Medevere?
I will say yes. I'm not in favor of moratoriums. I've told John this in the past. I understand what we're trying to do. We just got to do it right this time. So if
Okay.
it takes
Well,
6
that's what
months. But I just think moratoriums send the wrong message. But I'll vote yes.
Okay, thank you, Tony,
You're
but
welcome.
you're right. We want to do it right this time.
We have to do it right this time, John.
Okay. So that does it for the public hearings. Next is, we have 10 resolutions tonight. Rose and I are going to share with you what they're all about, and I will give you an opportunity to speak to any of the resolutions that you wish to speak to. There are agendas up here on the table, extra ones, so that if you wish to go through the agenda items as I explain them, you're welcome to do so. Now, if you have other comments and thoughts you want to share with this board that don't deal with the resolutions, you will have an opportunity to do that after the resolutions, okay? But this next segment just deals with the resolutions. Like I said, there's agendas up here if you wish to grab one on the table. Okay, you already have them? Yes.
Can I just add something here? Sure. I just want everybody to know, because I think that there's been a misunderstanding here about the hearings and people coming up to speak. For the public hearings, as I see it, John, there is no time limit. So these first ones that we've had here, there's been no time limit for people talking, and they come up more than once. For the privilege of the floor, there are only 3 minutes, and that's for the resolutions that we're talking about. And then at the privilege of the floor afterwards, there's 4 minutes. I just wanted to remind everybody that, and I think we're going to try to stick to that.
Yes.
We've discussed it.
The board is holding my feet to the fire on that. And I think Councilman Clements.
Why? Doesn't it depend on the subject matter?
Well, not to say you can't come up more than once, John.
Okay, all right.
Okay. Thank you, Councilman Clements.
Gives everybody a fair shot.
Okay, got it.
Okay. All right, so Resolution 3.1.
So resolution authorizing and ratifying emergency truck repairs at Town Highway Department.
Okay, we blew an engine, and we don't have extra trucks in the highway department for snow plowing. All right, our options are get it repaired or buy a new engine. Well, we looked in all those options. Buying a new engine was $30,000, and that did not include installing it and everything that's involved with that. We found out that we can get someone, Southworth Milton Incorporated, to make repairs on the engine, and they can do it now, and they can fix the engine, and they'll warranty it for 4 years for $22,500. So we need that truck, we need it now, and we think that after doing our homework, that was the best deal. So this resolution is approving the expenditure of $22,500 to repair the motor, and it waives the requirement under the Town of Queensbury's purchasing policy that we get 2 written quotes. And it authorizes, directs, and ratifies the town highway superintendent's engagement of Southworth Milton to make emergency motor repairs on highway tandem truck number 47 for an amount not to exceed $22,500. Resolution 3.2, Rose, please.
Resolution authorizing a lease agreement between the Town of Queensbury and National Business Equipment.
Okay, I want to thank Councilman Clements and Councilman Irish for helping this to come about. This is an agreement with National Business Equipment. It consolidates 4 vendors that we have for copying equipment that we have in the town. This will save money to the tune of an estimated amount of $600 a month, or about $7,000, by going this route instead of with the other 4 vendors. We don't have any contracts that extend us or make us have to agree to that. This is an agreement with National Business Equipment. It's a lease agreement. And it's for the various types of equipment that we're going to need. Resolution 3.3.
Resolution authorizing agreement between the Town of Queensbury and Wex Bank.
Okay, this is an interesting one. The young people we have working for the town, especially, and this not necessarily has to apply to just young people, but it came up with a park and rec discussion, and with these young people, and they work part-time, and their paychecks may only be $45, and they're teenagers, and we issue them a check, and they lose the check, and we cancel that, write them a new one. In any event, there was a request, why couldn't we put what we pay them on a debit card? Because that's what they use, and that's what they like, and, okay. So we're making an arrangement with Wex Bank. And our GTM is the firm that we hire that does our checks and so forth. And they will issue a debit kind of card, a Visa card, to these young people in lieu of a check, if they so desire. This is actually less expensive to the town than issuing the check. Okay, and the expense is rather minimal. The credit card company makes their money from the merchants, as they do with all our credit type of cards. All right, so this is just an option for payment. The young people seem to be most interested in it, that they can have a debit card. Now, this debit card, as time goes on, if they don't spend their whole debit card, their next week's paycheck gets added to that particular debit card. So it's just an option for them. And like I say, this is probably the towns joining the new world. Resolution 3.4.
It's a resolution authorizing agreement between Town of Queensbury and Direct Energy Business Marketing, LLC, DBA Direct Energy Business for power sale natural gas through MEGA program.
All right, this is, we did our homework. It's time to renew a contract. We have a contract with Direct Energy. We wanted to know it's time to renew it. So we asked them, what kind of prices do you offer? And they gave a price of $3.696 per decatherm, which is about 37 cents a therm. And we did our homework, and that actually is a pretty good rate. And we can tie this, we can do this for 3 years. And so we're trying to jump on this. We think it's a good deal. I researched it, Chris Harrington researched it, we both came to the same conclusion. So this is actually extending our current agreement with a price of about $3.70 a decatherm, or about 37 cents a therm, for 3 years. It's a natural gas program through a MEGA program, and that's resolution 3.4. 3.5.
Resolution authorizing hiring of Catherine Deck as senior clerk for Department of Building and Codes Enforcement.
Okay, well, we've had a shift of personnel here. Adrian Weaver left our assessors to retire and enjoy life. We miss her, but that left an opening in the assessors department. Carlene Ramsey was downstairs in Building and Code, said, I'd like to have that job. So we said, well, that's fine. We like moving people inside, especially we know when they're good workers. So Carlene moved up to the assessor's office. Now we have an opening down in Building and Codes left vacant by Carlene. Now we have to pick from the civil service list for the senior clerk job. And we did. We inquired the first three, that you have to do it in order. And the first three weren't interested. We did go down to the next grouping. We did find one or two people that were interviewed. We found one, Dave Hatton, who was the director of Building and Codes, found one that he thought would be very good for his department. That person had an incident occur in their family, so he declined the position. So Dave Hatton went back to the civil service list with the remainders, find out if anybody was interested in the job. He did some more interviews, and he came to the conclusion that Catherine Deck would be a suitable replacement. So this is a resolution. You may remember, we already passed one for another individual, but again, that individual had an issue with the family. Something happened in his family and declined. So this is authorizing the hiring of Catherine Deck as senior clerk for the Department of Building and Codes. Okay, that's 3.5, 3.6, Rose?
Resolution authorizing commencement of Supreme Court action to enforce code against non-compliant property.
Okay, this is a 42 Oak Tree Circle over in Hidden Hills, and the house is falling apart. The owner was and is Terry Bell. This resolution empowers this board to move forward with trying to do something to assure that that property gets taken care of. I'll read you the resolution. The Supreme Court action may be commenced if this board wishes to do so against any and all persons believed to have any legal interest in the property or any obligation to remedy the violation. Okay, it's been deemed unsafe. It's a public health issue, and this board wishes to move on it. We're not quite sure how we're doing it, but this resolution gives us the authority to move ahead. Resolution 3.7, Rose.
So resolution setting public hearing on Bay Ridge Volunteer Fire Company, Inc.'s proposed 2016 through 2020 fire protection service agreement and proposal to purchase engine rescue fire apparatus and use tax-exempt financing for such purchase.
Okay, this is a resolution that approves a contractual agreement with Bay Ridge Volunteer Fire Company, and it's a 5-year agreement, and each year is 2%. The first year is $456,128, 2% more than it was in 2015. 2017 is for $465,251, 2% more than it was in 2016. 2018 is $474,556, and that's 2% more than it was in 2017. 2019 is $484,047, 2% more than it was in 2018. And 2020 is $493,728, 2% more than it was in 2019. Now, anything that fire department wants to do, such as buying a $700,000 new apparatus, they have to do it within that budget, which is limited to 2%. And it forces the fire department to do long-range planning rather than 1 year of planning. Any of the purchases they're planning or planning in the next 5 years has to fall within this budget. This is what this board's approving. So if they do, in fact, want to purchase a new apparatus, a new fire engine truck to replace the 1995 KME engine fire apparatus, which is engine 323. They may spend up to $700,000, is priced not to exceed that. This resolution agrees to allow them to move forward on that, but again, they have to stay within their contract. So this is setting a public hearing, which will be March 9th on the Bay Ridge Volunteer Fire Department's agreement. Resolution 3.8.
It's a resolution authorizing acceptance of grant funds from New York State Office of Court Administration for funds to be used for town court improvements.
Okay, the court was awarded a grant, $4,550. And the court would like to do 3 things with the grant, but it costs a little bit more than $4,550. They would like to purchase a multimedia projector for use in the courtroom for presentations. They would like to buy an intercom system for inmate attorney and their conversations in the conference room. And they would like new desks for the court office. That total comes to $7,023.37. They got a grant of $4,550. This resolution, they can't accept the grant unless the town board tells them they can accept the grant. And the resolution also authorizes $2,474 in appropriations from a from the general fund to enable them to purchase those 3 items. Resolution 3.9, Rose.
Resolution authorizing a procedure to notify employees of return to work physicals.
Okay. The health and welfare of our employees is number 1 to this board. We want to assure that their health and safety and welfare remains well. So if they're out for workman comp or an injury or disability, when they won't come back, we want to make sure that they can do the job that they were assigned to do and that they're expected to do. We do not want them to have further injury because they tried to do their job. So this is a resolution that requires employees to get returned to work physicals. Resolution 310, Rose?
Resolution approving an audit of bills warrant of February 10th, 2015.
Okay. As you know, the town can't pay its bills until this town board allows it to, so they've reviewed the bills. And it's a warrant with a run date of February 5th and a payment date of February 10th, totaling $455,369.22. Okay, those are the 10 resolutions. Is there anybody from the public that would like to speak to any of those resolutions, ask questions, share concerns? Yes, John.
Resolution 3.1, ratifying the emergency truck repairs. Did Southwest Milton incur any costs in determining that it was going to cost $22,000 to repair the existing engine?
Not that I'm aware of.
Did they make the, who determined what had to be done to this engine?
Well, they looked, I mean, they obviously looked at what it would cost to buy the engine and then the labor to install the engine versus rebuild the engine.
Yeah, rebuilding, they have to know what parts they're going to need and to
The
what
whole
extent the engine was
The
damaged.
whole engine is going to be rebuilt, top to bottom.
Yep, rebuilt. Rebuilt means
Not
some
only
of the
thing,
parts
but
are salvaged.
The block. The block, everything else gets replaced. It's a rebuild from floor to ceiling.
Well, usually when an engine blows, it's the block that goes.
No, not
No?
necessarily, John. No.
What did go? What happened? Did it throw a rod? Did it?
I think it ruined the turbo from what I understand from
That's what I understand.
Tommy.
It what?
And the
Something to
top
do
end
with
of the
the
motor,
turbo.
so the
Top
turbo
end
and the
of the
top end.
What? I didn't get it.
The turbo and the top end.
Okay.
They're turbocharged engines in the dump trucks.
Yeah.
It ruined the turbo and it ruined,
So it's the whole intake.
right.
Okay. $22,000? Wow. Okay. 3.5. As far as I know, we don't have a personnel manager in this town. With whom does Mr. Hatton or whoever's involved go through and speak and to hire
Well,
this?
more and more, and you're right, more and more of that role is being taken on by Victoria Lamarck, who is my executive assistant. She's doing more and more HR, civil service. She's learning the ropes, and she's doing more and more of this. This board also reviews that, and they've expressed an interest in setting some policies. So we're going to be working on policy as the future comes. So we're kind of going into this, John.
Thank you.
Yes. Anybody else have any questions or concerns on resolutions tonight? Okay. Then is there any resolution or question or concern on behalf of the town board? Is there any particular one that you
I
would
will be
like?
abstaining from 3.6, so if you want to either pull it or just I'll abstain.
Separately.
You're allowed, okay, yeah, so we'll pull
See what a roll
3.6.
call on 3.6.
Any other resolution? Okay, so resolutions 3.1, 3.2, 3.3, 3.4, 3.5, 3.7, 3.8, 3.9, and 3.10. Is there a motion to approve?
I'll introduce.
Introduced by Councilman Medivir, seconded by Councilman Van Ness. Roll call vote.
Mr. Irish?
Yes.
Mr. Vaness?
Yes.
Mr. Stroud?
Yeah.
Mr. Medivir?
Yes.
Mr. Clements?
Yes.
Okay, resolution 3.6, which is resolution authorizing commencement of Supreme Court action to enforce code against non-compliant property.
I'll move.
Moved by Councilman Van Ness, seconded by Councilman Clements. Roll call vote.
Mr. Vaness?
Yes.
Mr. Stroud?
Yeah.
Mr. Medivir?
I'm going to abstain.
Mr. Clements?
Yes.
Mr. Irish?
Yes.
Okay, that does it for resolutions. Any correspondence, Rose?
Yes. I have the supervisor's report for community development, building and codes for the month of January on file in the town clerk's office.
Okay. And that's it?
Yes.
Okay, next we have privilege of the floor. It's 4-minute limit. And is there anybody that would like to speak to the town board about any town topic? John, come on.
Good evening. For your record, my name is John Salvador. You recall at your last meeting, I brought up the subject of the jurisdiction on navigable waters, and I left with you a letter commenting on Judge Alisi's court decision in the Hoffman case. The next day, I took the liberty to distribute that letter to others that I had copied. And I kind of received the response that, and it appeared that Mr. Stroud had already spoken with many of the people, that assessments are not regulations. That's kind of the gist of what it boiled down to, that sure enough, regulations have to be addressed, but assessments are not regulations. So I went into the state's records, and I prepared this response to that issue. You will recall my correspondence of January 26 related to the fact that time and again, the state's courts have ruled that the paramount authority of the state on its navigable waterways is not limited to the regulation of navigation, but extends to every form of regulation in the public interest. I understand that skepticism remains in the minds of certain of the town's officials as to whether or not the local evaluation of real property for purposes of levying local land and school taxes can be encompassed in the body of regulations referred to by the New York State Court of Appeals in People v. Systems Property. Section 2 of Article 16 of the New York State Constitution provides that, quote, "The legislature shall provide for the supervision, review, and equalization of assessments for purposes of taxation." Following, Section 33 of Town Law provides for assessors to, quote, "have such powers and shall perform such duties as are conferred or imposed by law." Volume 20 of the state's official compilation of codes, rules, and regulations contains the state's systematized enforcement approach to, quote, "taxation and finance." Therein, Chapter 16 is devoted to the statewide administration of real property taxation in 16 parts, 1885 to 8220. Nowhere in parts 8185 to 8201 is local government assessor permitted to assess structural improvements, particularly temporary wooden stake docks on navigable waters. There should be no doubt that the regulations found in 20 NYCRR Parts 8185 to 8201 are included in the basket of regulations to which the state courts have consistently referenced. It is just it's just not possible that anyone at the town level could function without functioning in accordance with the state regulations, be it the assessor or anyone else. So I'll leave this letter.
I actually have three questions, if I
Yes.
haven't forgotten them all. So, and I read through your letter, I didn't bring it with me, and I apologize, I don't have it in front of me, but, so it's your contention that the town is not authorized to assess taxes on a dock or a boathouse on the lake?
On navigable waters,
Okay.
which Lake George is one.
Okay. You have property that's underwater on Lake George.
Land.
Are you paying town taxes on that land?
Yes, I am.
Okay. My last question is, would those structures have an impact on the value of the property that's not on navigable waterways for that owner?
That doesn't enter into the question. The point is that
Well, it does if it has an impact on the value of the property.
the structures are on navigable
I
waters.
understand that. We're talking about the value of the property for taxation. If that structure has an impact on that value of that property that's not on the
Okay.
navigable waterway. they
Okay,
pay
what can the value of underwater land be?
I don't know. I'm just
Okay.
saying, I don't agree with your premise that
Yeah.
the town can't
No.
assess taxes for that.
If the underwater land has some value, granted, okay, but what can be the value of underwater land? That's for the assessor to determine.
Well, yeah, but you
But-
just said that's not for her to determine.
The structures, not the land.
All right.
The structures are.
But my question would be, if the structures improve the value of the land, we have to be able to assess that
Fine,
to the owner.
fine, put a value on it.
Okay.
That's all. Put a value on it. It may not be the value of the structures.
Well, I don't know that we're valuing the structure itself as much as we are the impact of that structure on the value of the property, is what we're assessing,
Two different things.
I guess, but
But in any case, the important fact is that the local government does not have jurisdiction on navigable waters, be it planning and zoning, be it assessment, whatever.
All right, John, thank you. Anybody else like to speak to the board about town topics? Yes, Dave.
Dave Judkins, Butler Pond Road, Queensbury. I just wanted to ask a couple questions about the Just Bev project. I spoke to Craig Brown, who suggested that the town board, or some members of the town board, in a proactive manner, assuming that Just Bev was in fact going to put in an application to continue with their project, was looking at possible wording to at least address the concept of adding water extraction to the existing code. And I was just wondering if there had been any progress along those lines, or where that might stand. I don't know to date whether or not they've actually put the application in or not. I just wanted to.
Not since you and I talked last Thursday.
Okay, all right. And I just wanted to sort of make certain that if there is discussion along that line, I think it would be important to sort of delineate whether or not there was going to be wording in there for a municipality to extract water or a private business to extract water from a land conservation 10-acre zoning area, which is a very big distinction. So I appreciate you doing due diligence there. Just a one thing that I did speak to John about, and I wanted to sort of mention to all of you. Obviously, I have concerns about the trucks up and down that road and that area being used for such a use, but I have a bigger concern about the attention that this has gotten in the newspaper, in the city of Glens Falls, regarding, it almost seems as though this is this is a done deal. Every time there's been anything in the paper, they've said you're going to start in April. Mr. Scipion was described as affluent in mythical language in the paper. Other concepts like this, very fluffy article that was written that they hired BN Communications to get on the front page of the newspaper. My concern is that this is so considered a done deal by most people that I talk to. It seems to me that the town of Queensbury has nothing left but to have egg on its face if they decide that this actually really doesn't meet the code and says no. And once again, the town of Queensbury will be sticking it to the city of Glens Falls. The reason I mention this is because I just want to make sure that in as much as you're doing due diligence, that the community's aware that there is due diligence and this is not moving along at a breakneck pace and there's no effort to try and get it done by some mythical deadline of April that's been in the paper several times. But there hasn't really been any communication from the town, and I recognize they haven't put in their application, but let's be honest, we all know that they're going to. I think it's important to remind everybody that they started this project on Butler Pond Road without any permission or permits. They've already put in a road, cleared a significant amount of area, put in pipes, no environmental impact study, no CERCLA, however you pronounce that, no applications or permits for any of the work that's already been completed. The issue of weight limits on that road in the spring, which have been an issue in the past, has not been discussed. The County Highway Department has not evaluated the impact of a high-risk intersection with multiple trucks stopping and starting at that intersection, or the school bus stop that's at the only three-way intersection on that road. The State Department of Environmental Conservation has some very specific requirements regarding this, especially when it requires aquifers.
Dave?
Yep.
You're welcome to come back and finish up your discussion, but 4 minutes and we recycle through, and if you wanted to finish it up, you're welcome to come back.
Fair enough.
Okay?
Yep, no problem.
Okay. Yes.
Well, Dave's in the penalty box, I guess. I'd just like to ask a question, a process question. I tried to do some homework on tonight's agenda, as I've done in the past, and I went online and I was looking for packets or background information. I know the supervisor gives a good rundown. But
Jim, would you speak into the mic?
But should there be packets for these things? And if so, should they be online, available to the public to review before the meetings? The only one that was in tonight's was 3.1.
I thought they were
We
all.
had problems with the
I went at 4 o'clock this afternoon.
Usually they are.
It didn't get on.
Usually they all are.
Is that a requirement of law or something that they be on?
Normally, they're on there by the Friday before our meeting, so.
Okay. Well, I was just interested because I tried to do some homework for tonight's meeting.
You
And
could bring up the agenda, but you couldn't bring up the resolution itself.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah,
And I
normally
couldn't
they are.
find an agenda for the workshop coming up in the middle of the week either.
Right. Apologize
can't
for that.
scan
That's
them.
not
Okay.
usually
I
the
was just
case.
checking. Thanks.
John, let's see if anybody else would like to speak to the board. Anybody else like to speak to the board? All right, then we'll go around again, John, and then Dave.
With respect to underwater land, I am not the only one on Lake George that owns underwater land. Every single property owner that owns lakefront property has title to underwater land, down to the mean low water mark. This is on Lake George. I speak only for Lake George, not any other lake. So, depending on the topography of the land in front of your place, Everyone owns underwater land. In fact, the Park Commission, in their fee schedule, only taxes from the mean low water mark out. They do not tax the dock on.
John, is the dock attached to the land above the low mean water mark?
Depends on how it's built.
Not
Not all of them.
Yeah,
Huh? And the courts address that.
I know, it's,
The courts
wouldn't you
address
say
that.
it's highly unusual that people build docks that are underwater?
Some docks are underwater
okay.
in the spring, when the water comes up to the mean high water mark.
Yeah, but
Some
the
docks
dock,
are submerged.
the dock was built above the low mean water mark.
Not all docks are. I can show you docks that are submerged.
All right, well, all
Do
right.
do you know of any of the docks that are actually on state property underwater?
Oh, yeah, many, almost all of them.
Yeah, they have
The
piling.
mean low water mark is 320 point, the mean high is around, is 320.2, so you've only got about 2.48 feet difference, and depending on the topography, would tell you how far out, but
Right.
everybody takes title to the mean low.
Okay, thank you, John. Dave?
Taxed.
So, I'm not sure exactly where I let off, but the county highway department has not evaluated the impact of this truck traffic and what it might represent to a high-risk intersection. And as you know, that intersection went from normal stop signs to extra-large stop signs to now stop signs with stop blinking red lights over it. So clearly, it has not just your average risk intersection. And now we have 6-foot snowbanks there as well. So just picture multiple trucks turning on and off of that road in an area that's already described as high risk. No one has looked into the effect that this might have on the wells of the residents. Hydrologists suggest that this may have a very significant effect on us. There is no spill plan that's been discussed. The EPA has some concerns. And as I said, the Department of Environmental Conservation has some very significant, very specific rules and regulations regarding plans like this, especially when they involve aquifers and waterways. Now, remember, no spill plan, and that water that runs out of there runs completely through the town of Queensbury. And we all know accidents happen. So I just, again, my purpose for addressing you tonight is to say, and I appreciate you doing due diligence, but when what the community is hearing through the newspaper is Mr. Scipion is colorful in his own right, speaking in a poetic storytelling style of motivational speaker, fluent in figurative language, and Mr. Scipion himself says it's a little bit like searching for the mythical unicorn. I think we have to just sort of take a step back and put this into real terms, how it's affecting the town, how it's going to affect the people who live up there, what's the risk to the town, and make sure that people know that we're doing due diligence, and if ultimately it's decided that this plan has to be significantly altered or nixed, that it's not just the town sticking it to the city of Glens Falls once again. So in closing, I would just ask two things. I'm going to, once again, if you don't mind, read the zoning district rules. It is an area that adds to the rural character and should be protected as such. That's the definition. Adds to the rural character and should be protected as such, and that was adopted in 2007. This is not an archaic zone. This land conservation 10-acre is the second most restrictive zoning in the town of Queensbury. It's not just neighborhood, it's land conservation. And I would ask each of you, if you could take a few minutes out of your time, please, this week, after all this snow we've seen, drive up Butler Pond Road. It gets no sun. It's going to have water trucks up and down it. There's 6-foot snowbanks on each side. The road is now contracted about 3/4 of what it normally is. People walk up and down that road all the time for exercise. And please consider the impact of multiple 3,000-gallon trucks up and down that road this time of year, this week, next year. Thanks very much.
Okay, thank you, Dave. Okay. Town board discussions. Let's start with Councilman Van Ness.
All set. Thanks, Chairman.
Councilman Irish.
All set.
Councilman Clements. Councilman Medevere.
Only thing I want to do is extend my condolences to you, John, for the loss of your brother. I just want to extend my condolences to you for your loss. And I'm all set. Thank you.
Okay, I just have a few little things to report. We got our monthly report. It's a monthly report to the supervisor, building and codes. It's the amount of construction. And for the month of January of 2015, it was $5,111,500. In comparison to this time last year, which was $2,652,275. I hope this is an indication of the growth in the town, 93% growth compared to last year, so we're up to a good start. Let's see. Some of this I'll save for another day. And that's going to be it for me. I'll save the rest of it. We'll keep the meeting to about 8:35. Is there anything else on behalf of the board? Okay. Well, no executive sessions needed tonight. I would like to thank Joel Barlow for showing up in the snowstorm to film us tonight. I'd like to thank Look TV. And I'd like to thank our sponsors, one of which is Store Tech. So is there a motion to adjourn? Moved by Councilman Irish, seconded by Councilman Clements. In favor, say aye. Aye. We're adjourned.